Hey everybody, my name is Bill Holmes. Welcome to tonight's edition of ProjectManagementForum.net. We're continuing the series on project management, ethic, and professional conduct, and we're specifically going over the code of conduct. In the last session, I talked about the fact that it is a project manager's responsibility to report the absolute truth of the status of the project. And if the project has gone outside of the approved standard deviation reporting standards, then the project manager had to report on it and had to report honestly. But let me ask you this question. What is absolute truth? And I asked that question because as I report this, last week alone, several news organizations got a hold of a story, they ran with it, and then another news organization ran with it. There was no corroboration, there was no verification, and ultimately within a 24-hour news cycle, that story was wrong. That happened 3 times last week. So when you're running a very, very complicated project, how do you know whether the information you've got in front of you is accurate and credible? Well, it's your responsibility to know. So if somebody comes to you with a risk or an issue or a challenge or some sort of ethical issue, or just the project schedule looks really bad, it's your responsibility to determine the credibility both of the source. Does this person really know what they're talking about? Maybe they just are not properly trained. And the information itself. Do I trust the underlying reporting? That can be a challenge sometimes in a complicated project. If you determine that the source is credible and the report is accurate, then you must report it. There are no exceptions. Now, here's what I have seen. I have seen project managers get bad news and they investigate it. And they investigate it. And they investigate it. And they investigate it. And at no point do they ever really come to a conclusion on it. And so it just sort of hangs out there as a problem. That is not an ethical way to handle it. So you determine the credibility. If it is credible, you report on it. If it's not credible, you do what those news organizations should have done, and you research it, you talk to the right people, you look at your underlying data, and if you in fact find out that you have an issue with your project, or some risk has presented itself, or you're off schedule, or you even got the budget wrong, whatever your issue is, you're ethically required to immediately report it at the point in time in which you are sure. Now, project management is one of those things where there are absolute truths. It's sometimes difficult to get to them. I'm presenting this as if it's not a challenge, but I know on a big complicated project, especially if you're doing an IT type project, especially if you're doing one of these blended projects where it's a semi-agile, semi-waterfall, or maybe even a pure agile project, you still have to make sure you understand where you are within the project. You still have reportable parameters, and if those parameters are breached, you are ethically bound to report it. Now, in our next session, we're going to talk about the actual values within the PMI ethics and code of conduct. Hey, thanks for listening, everybody.